Welcome to the Businesstalk podcast. I am Deepak, your host from India. It's a true pleasure to have Dr. Ashita Aggarwal, who joins us as distinguished guest on today's episode. Before we begin, allow me to introduce today's guest for the episode. Dr. Ashita Aggarwal is a professor of marketing and design thinking. She is also the chairperson of the postgraduate diploma in management programs at Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan's SP Jain Institute of Management and Research. A gold medalist and double doctorate holder, she specializes in consumer brand relationships, strategic brand management, and voice AI in marketing. Author of Brands and Branding, published by Routledge, her research and case studies are globally recognized, earning her multiple awards, including the Ivy Bestsellers and Devang Mehta Best Marketing Professor. With over 25 years in management education, Professor Ashita has taught internationally and advised organizations on branding, consumer insights, and marketing strategy. Today, Professor Ashita Aggarwal joins us to discuss her research, value creation, and value appropriation using voice AI technology, integrating B2B and B2C marketplaces. Let's not keep you waiting. Please join me in welcoming Professor Ashita Aggarwal to the podcast. Professor Ashita, we deeply appreciate your gracious acceptance of our invitation. It is an honor and privilege to host you today.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. And a privilege is always mine to be on your show and talk about my research. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, how does your integrated framework explain the paradox that greater integration potential in voice AI leads firms to invest less in proprietary solutions and more in existing platforms?
So, the research context is that how can organization monetize the voice AI? And before I answer your question, the entire research idea starts with the point that Amazon was divesting out of Alexa because Alexa was not making too much of money. Yet you could find Alexa in every home and people using it. But when we got into it, that people are using it for, it's a glorified clock or a music system. But the company, which thought that it would lead to some kind of monetization, was not happening. And that our research is aimed at understanding that how can organizations monetize voice AI. Within that, one of our proposition, which is what you asked, is that how better integration is making organization invest less. So, what we discovered through our qualitative work and deep immersion with the industry leaders across sectors was that people are ready to invest more in voice AI when they see an opportunity for differentiation. Because the consumer was already exposed to some part of voice AI, they got used to the free model. Companies thought that I can make money only if I can give greater value, and greater value will come if I am the only one providing that value. Now, when in applications, like for example, FAQs, right, in banking, the first level FAQs or insurance first level FAQs, or airlines, when you have to just, kind of look at what are the options available. Now, these are use of voice AI, wherein everybody could be using it. Platforms were available in the ecosystem by third party, which could be customized to all the, let's say banking, insurance services, etc. And therefore, it was depriving the organizations of any kind of a differentiation. When that happened, organizations were not ready to invest in creating their own technology for voice AI. Rather than, they preferred to use the existing third party platforms doing the job adequately well. So it became more of a parity point rather than a opportunity for differentiation, and hence the paradox.
Professor, in your study, what are the most critical ways that integrating B2B and B2C marketplaces amplifies value creation with voice AI beyond treating them as a separate silos?
So generally, if you look at research and even in AI and the past technology research, it looks at B2B adoption and monetization separately from a B2C adoption and monetization. So, I mean, many people say that how is voice AI different from any other technology? Well, it is. First, it is AI. Any other technology may not always be AI. Now, within AI, also voice lends naturally to conversation. It is something which is, easy for people to adopt and understand. If the technology barrier of adoption is very high, it follows a different path. Whereas adoption of voice AI actually is a low hanging fruit for people. And that's a reason why Alexa or a Siri became very common among consumers. I mean, we're not talking of the kind of application they're using for. Maybe the companies did not anticipate that, but they could seed in the technology in the consumer's life through low hanging applications. Acceptability of voice was high. Now, when the monetization came in, initially companies thought that probably in the B2C market, I am seeding, it's like a razor and a blade. So I'm seeding my Alexa. People will get used to some free services, and then they will start paying subscription based services, etc. But it never happened because people were reluctant to move to a more evolved technology use of voice AI, but the lower hanging fruits were there. So they became comfortable with it. They started integrating in their life. However, the B2C route in itself was not giving the monetization opportunity as in the form it was. And therefore, the organization realized that monetization is happening somewhere else. And that is where the B2B came in. How can I work with other organizations to increase the value they are creating for the customer or the value they are creating for the organization, which is we are saying decreasing the cost of operation or increasing the customer experience, which is coming in as outcome variables. Now, even in that route, the question was, I, as a seller of voice AI service, how can I convince the other B2B company, whether it's a healthcare, insurance, financial services, etc., to buy my services? And what we found out in our conversation with both the consumers and the industry leaders was that people, companies were more ready to invest in voice AI through either a build or a buy model. That's a separate question. If the customer showed some kind of a pull power, right? And that's where I brought in the differentiation opportunity. So for example, a healthcare would say, okay, I'll create my voice AI application, or I will work with you to do that if my customer feels it is adding on to their value, right? So which means customer has to be comfortable with the technology, and it should be able to converse with the technology, whether it is to say, okay, what my results are, is my health going fine, what is my blood specs in the last 3 studies, and what do I need to do, or why say I reminding them of the test, or the probably that your BP is lowering down, if you're wearing a health tech with the voice AI. So integration can be done by a healthcare company. Now that would only happen if a consumer already is comfortable with the voice AI technology. Otherwise, the companies were not ready to invest to make customers comfortable with voice. And hence that integration of a B2B, B2C marketplace came in, wherein we are proposing that if a customer or a consumer, the end user, is already accepted or adopted voice AI to a certain level, it makes it easy for organization to embed voice AI in their product and services, hence creating value for the end user, right? And that becomes their prime motive. Now, cost also will go down, which they will experience over time, right? But there is a pull power from the consumer, which increases my, as an organization's intention to integrate voice, and hence they cannot operate in silos. It is actually also operating the other way. And, this research was published last year, and technology has moved so quickly that now we are seeing that because customers are seeing that voice AI is used by companies, their willingness to incorporate in their own life has also gone up, wherein the voice AI is now coming into home solutions and healthcare solutions. So it is actually helping both the markets, and probably in times to come will help the organization to monetize voice even from consumer segment and not just the organization or the B2B marketplace.
Professor, in the paper you highlight that regulatory constraint can override strong business incentives in voice AI adoption. Can
Yes.
you share concrete examples of such regulatory breaks and how strategies should design around them?
So regulatory environment is definitely a big question whether it comes to voice AI or AI as such. Everything is uncertain. Even the regulators don't know what to expect. We are learning every possible thing. I mean, every day we are learning something new, that, what are the challenges we are facing. So whenever the market is regulated, one is that the marketplace is regulated. For example, banking. It's a very highly regulated, wherein privacy and security of data is paramount. Companies are more and more reluctant to incorporate voice AI, right? That would be a spanner for adoption and inclusion, even if they see a monetization opportunity. The other, now, because it's a regulated marketplace, that's a one condition. Secondly, as AI is becoming common, countries like EU, Europe, etc., have a very heavy or very strict regulation on voice AI itself. So disclosures, whether you're speaking to a voice AI chatbot or a human, or whether you can do a voice cloning or not, right? What kind of disclosures have to be made? What information can be shared with the voice AI, or what cannot be shared? So like in health and financial services, one, both the sectors are regulated. Secondly, geographically, voice AI regulations are very different. So it becomes a spanner. So let's say if I'm a healthcare company operating in EU, wherein there are highest possible regulations for AI usage. What can be, whether you can clone voice, what kind of disclosures have to be made, where can you use voice AI, not. And plus, healthcare data and privacy issues are also high. My willingness to invest in voice AI will come down. So, if there is a health company which is operating in a country wherein there could be regulations about healthcare data, but voice AI regulations are still not so strict. I mean, you have to disclose whether you're speaking with an AI chatbot or a human chatbot. They will feel less constrained to apply, right? Whereas in marketplaces wherein regulations are not so much, tourism, not very highly regulated market, the tendency of the companies to try and experiment would be higher because, and the only reason is that uncertainty with regulations is high because AI itself is evolving so fast that we don't know what will happen tomorrow. And the companies want to have a more protective or a more, constrained approach to how much can I invest.
Professor, what did your multi-method research designs like surveys, focus groups, and expert interviews reveal about the biggest disconnects between consumer expectations and decision makers' assumptions about voice AI?
Um, okay, yes. So it is my paper uses a grounded theory approach wherein we were trying to understand the marketplace, which started with first the consumer survey, wherein we just wanted to understand that how are people using voice. It was basically to look at the customer's perception of voice. And then we went into the focus group discussion, which is with the professionals who could both be the consumers, but the discussion was more from the lens of how can they see the application of voice in their own organization and workplace and the effect of it. And then we did it with the business leaders who were the decision makers. So consumers actually, we found the disconnect was that the consumers did not even know that there was so much of potential of voice, of how they can integrate in their life. They were so happy doing just, as we say, glorified clock, alarm clock, and a music system that the larger applications, especially in India, were around these two. Consumers in the West still were experimenting with voice commerce, but more with the low involvement routine purchases. Otherwise, the applications were very limited. Whereas what the companies thought was that, voice AI had a huge potential, but somehow the consumers don't see the potential. And organizations were thinking that it could be used more for cost implication. I mean, I can reduce my cost because I can depute it for, let's say, a first level of targeting, like qualifying my cold leads into the hot leads or asking or answering the first level FAQs. So some kind of call centers could be replaced to bring my costs down. I think I would not call it as a disconnect. I think it was evolving in a nature where we could see the perspectives of three and a clear gap that nobody knew how to make money out of it. Right. And they were trying to think that there's a separate model for B2C and there's a separate model for B2B. But definitely there was a opportunity not used enough wherein you could bring in the consumer's expectation of looking at the potential and companies working towards an ecosystem development. This is a highly collaborative marketplace, right? Organization needs to work with service providers, ecosystem developers for creation management of voice AI, and then organizations have to depute it at multiple level, whereas companies like, let's say, Amazon or Apple have to also work voice AI or deputing voice AI in consumers' life for applications more than just clock or otherwise. So it helped us look at the entire triangulation. So we actually use a triangulation approach to look at multiple stakeholders to be able to look at the gap areas and hence the opportunities which were not realized today.
Professor, findings show that domain specialization significantly enhances perceived value and competitive advantage in voice AI. What does getting domain specialization right look like in practice for a firm just starting its voice AI journey?
Yeah, so domain specialization here means that if you create a specialized voice AI system rather than a generic voice AI system, it would probably give you a better chance at monetization. So, for example, let's say I'm a retail company, right? And I am highly risk taking. I have comfort with technology and I am investing in building my own voice AI system. Perfect. Now, I want to build a voice AI system with a third party developer, which is specializing in retail sector, right? Because I'm a retail company. So my voice AI would be looking at past purchases, how people buy, what are their brands in their study. So how do you trigger to tell them that, okay, you know what, your tire is getting over and it's time to replace it, or at the store when they are, how to guide them, etc. So the entire voice AI system is built for retail application. Okay. Now, I, as a company, of course, would be able to depute it in my own store, but I can also sell the basic platform to the other retail stores from which I can make money. So I'm not just the user, the B2B user of that technology, but I also act as a service provider of a retail specific voice AI to the other retail companies. So you specialize in domain. Now, if I am just a voice AI developer, the companies which could be like a Vodex or any other, which are generic voice AI, they are creating systems. They have a basic platform. They customize for the various clients where the domain specialization depends on how much client needs to add on to the specialization. So there are so many other providers and with AWS services, etc., that you can build the basic model if you want to, or there are opportunities of white labeling out there. So when there are more options, of course, your ability to monetize will come down. But when something is built just for you and specializing, even your competition or similar industry kind of companies would be able to buy the solution from you. So you are looking at a marketplace itself. And that's what we mean to say that domain specialization will increase your ability. So if the company has money, even if it is new to the voice AI as a journey, can think of the long term implication and say, today I want to invest on it. Like for example, Flipkart did invest in their building on their own voice AI system, right? I mean, whether they monetized it or not, or whether they would ever do it is a separate question altogether. But then you can, and then you can use it for yourself and also for sell it to the others.
Professor, anthropomorphism behaves very differently across B2C use context in your work.
Yes.
How should marketers calibrate how human their voice AI should feel to avoid both under engagement and user creepiness?
Yeah. So from the research, we are making a proposition that in the B2C market, there are four broad, use cases from where there is a monetization opportunity. Now, within those use cases, and the past literature tells us that, and when we are using AI, how human the AI is will determine how much people will engage with it, right? Now, in certain applications, because it's a qualitative work, we figured out that in certain application, consumers' comfort of having technology more human is more, whereas in certain others, it was not so more. So, just giving an anecdotal examples from our research work and the interviews which we did, a consumer said that if a voice AI is wanting to make a decision on my part, right, it will be creepy. I don't want anybody to take the agency. I would not be very comfortable to share my bank balance and tell me where to, I mean, I can ask its recommendation. Till that point, it's okay. But moment it tells me, this is your income and I think this is where you should invest your money, or I'm already investing your money. So making decision or executing decisions on my behalf, it will become creepy, right? So that is what we discovered. However, this was another gap which exists, and there is an opportunity to empirically test it, that in different use cases, how much of human likeliness is acceptable and what is the tipping point, which would require empirical work.
Professor, from a build versus buy standpoint, what decision rules or guiding questions does your framework offer to CXOs who are unsure whether to invest in proprietary voice AI or ride on big tech platforms?
Yeah. So, like we spoke about, that if you want to look at voice AI as a means to differentiate yourself, right? If that is the case, you will move towards more build models, because then you want to have proprietary on it. You want to make more domain specific models, which will provide you competitive advantage, and you can also use it to earn money from the similar companies, right? So therefore, if you're wanting to use it to really create more value for the customer, a specialized value for the customer, and earn money from it, you move towards a build model. Buy model will come in for the low hanging fruits. I'm not very sure what can I do with voice. Everybody is doing it. I also want to do it. Or you know what? Every airline company today has a first level of contact or FAQ with a chatbot and voice AI chatbot, and I think it's become a category norm. I should also do it, right? I don't want to put in too much of risk. If that is a attitude the organization comes in, it needs to be it is conservative and it needs to preserve the risk involved. They should go with the buy models, wherein they buy already available solutions, deploy them to their applications, and those are like straightforward use solution. They will never provide you competitive advantage. They serve more as a parity point and to test your comfort level. Now, in between, there are models wherein you have white labeling. So it is already there. Some part of customization happens and you can brand it. So the entire paradigm of build to buy will depend on how much risk you want to take. Whether you are doing it to follow the point of parity, or whether you are doing it to create competitive advantage and differentiation for yourself or greater value for the customer, whether you're using voice AI as one of the criterias to check box and do it to do your operations well and probably cut on the costs, or are you looking at it as an opportunity to make money? That, I think, would be the three very broad factors, apart from the other smaller ones, as a guideline of determining whether you are on the build side or the buy side of the voice AI deployment.
Professor, you argue that voice AI monetization is a post-adoption challenge rather than an adoption challenge. What are the most common mistakes firms make after rolling out voice AI that prevent value appropriation?
Yeah. Enough work has been done on adoption of technology. So we have had the Venkatesh's model, Davis model, and many other research of AI. Normal tech models and AI models, which probably would be looking at what are the adoption variables. So convenience, ease of use, and risk-taking abilities. All of that is done. So the gap we were trying to address in our research was what happens after adoption. So there are antecedents of adoption which have already been studied. But after adoption, what route the company takes? So what we discover is that after adoption, what happens is that you will need to see where are you deploying it, right? Whether it is creating value for you. What is the risk? So if your prior experience with technology is very good, you probably would be able to take more risk, and hence you will go on the build side, right? But if your prior experience with technology is not very good, you will probably try on the buy side, very low hanging fruit. So the real decision point, if we are looking at adoption is one thing, but how much to invest, which is build on buy, is determined by your past experience, how much of product integration is available. So your first question to me is that if there are solutions which others can use and it is integrated well, I will just use it. I will automatically go on the buy side because it's no differentiation. Whereas if there is an opportunity to differentiate, I'll behave differently. Regulatory environment. So all these after adoption will determine how much money you spend and what kind of model do you use. Now, once you make that decision, it will determine what is the customer's acceptability to it, the pull power of the customer, and how much you even try to make it domain specific. You can still build a model, but it is generic. Your ability to earn would be lesser. But the more domain specific it is, more specialized it is, your ability to make money would be more. Right? So that is the post adoption challenge that companies have to look at their own appetite, how the customer is absorbing it, and what do you want to do with it with respect to monetization. Are you using it only to decrease your cost? Are you using it to create value for the customer? Or are you using it to actually leverage the other business ideas? So one is to sell to the other companies, but also, let's say a company has a CSR activity, which is like reaching out for the education, in the rural areas, and I have a voice AI capability. I will think of how can I deploy my voice AI into this particular objective of CSR. So I can actually record the lectures. I can have AI classrooms for kids who are at home, because penetration of smartphone is very high, or mobile phone is very high, internet is very high. So I can even deploy it there. So you start leveraging it at multiple platforms, which is actually not just decreasing cost of operation, but also creating greater value. So that I would say is where the framework really focuses on, is that once you've made a decision to adopt, how much to spend on it and how much you want to work with it towards monetization is important question as well.
Professor, looking ahead, these sectors such as manufacturing, financial services, healthcare, or hospitality, do you believe are the most likely to unlock disproportionate value from voice AI? If they apply your framework, and why?
All the organizations, honestly, in today's time. So I probably would have been able to give you an answer when I did this paper, but as I see in last 1 year how the markets have evolved, actually all the organizations today can make derive value from voice AI. The reason, it is the natural way of how people talk, right? I mean, let's say in India, voice AI has a huge potential. Why? Because we also have people who cannot read and write. So to type your messages is difficult. To speak in vernacular language, even if I'm not very fluent in English, is easier for me. So in markets where there is vernacular language, your literacy is also low. Voice AI gives an opportunity for every business to penetrate tier 3 and the rural India. So healthcare. Now I'm a healthcare provider. I need to educate people. I need to answer their queries, and they need to interact with me to understand. If I have voice AI, they don't need to bother about writing, whether I'm writing wrong, I can read or not, because I can just talk with it, right? Talk to it. And financial services the same. Manufacturing, right? Manufacturing applications. Trucks. So, for example, a company like Mahindra integrates voice AI and it is selling to farmers, who are buying their equipments for, seeding or their tractors, even if they don't know English. If they can interact with my voice AI to get their queries resolved, to compare the two models of tractors, it will make their life so much more easier. So every sector today actually has an application of voice AI. Specifically for India, it is a way forward to penetrate the tier 3 and the rural country where the literacy levels are low, and talking is a natural way of conversing. The problem is that the current models are not linguistically trained. So we have like dialect changes every 10 kilometers, and probably the current models are still learning to be able to adjust to that change of dialects. But if you're able to do that, this could be revolutionary.
Professor Ashita, I would like to conclude this episode with one last question. If you had to advise policymakers listening to this podcast, what would be a balanced regulatory playbook for voice AI look like so that it protects consumers without killing innovation and value creation?
I would like to say, regulate outcomes and not mechanisms. So I understand that we don't know where it is moving and there are a lot of uncertainties, but what we are doing is we are regulating the mechanisms right now, that this should happen, how much cloning can you do, whether you can do cloning or not. My point to the policymakers would be to look at the outcome would be whether the disclosures are right. Yes, people know who are they talking to, right? Whether your voice AI systems are able to understand the real queries and not given wrong solutions to people. Outcome being whether the privacy and security of the data is preserved or not in the models. So, yes, outcome needs to be definitely monitored and regulated today, and policies which can do that should really be where the focus is, rather than looking at the technology and the mechanisms, because when that happens, companies will be more and more skeptical, which is also one of the propositions that regulatory environment will make the companies spend less. So if you're putting in too much of constraint, what will happen is the technology with so much of potential will probably start dying down, right? And we will lose on an opportunity which is it is not just monetization for companies, honestly, it is consumer well-being. I mean, I now think that we were giving the examples of, voice reaching out to farmers and lower sections of the society and non-literate people. Look at the amount of customer well-being which can be created with the use of voice AI. So mechanisms is losing on those opportunities, whereas regulating outcomes is going to ensure that keeping the guardrails intact, we preserve the privacy and the safety of the data, yet we are probably helping the companies innovate and adopt new technology to be in line with the times.
Listeners, as we close this conversation, it's clear that voice AI is no longer just a futuristic technology, but a powerful strategic lever for value creation and value appropriation across both B2B and B2C markets. Thank you, Professor Ashita Aggarwal, for sharing your research and experience with us. It has been a truly enlightening discussion, and I am sure our listeners will walk away with new questions, ideas, and most importantly, a clearer roadmap for their voice AI journey. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a good day.